Boom, let's do it. Oh, man, I think they're just trying to throw me off today. It is a conspiracy, guys. Washington State got me fired up. By the way, welcome to the Hungry for Wisdom podcast, the long-range edition, I guess. You guys can't see it. I've got a long table here set up for all kinds of other stuff, and so the camera's like down at the end. So it's not all up in my grill seeing every imperfection of my skin surface this time. So lucky for you there. But yeah, man, here's what happened. I've got it's been a little while since I recorded because, you know, it was Christmas and then I had mission work in January and whatever. And so I had a big backlog, so we've just been releasing those. But I'm back in the studio now, and sometime in the time that I was gone, all this information got sent to me from various places, and all of it kind of added up to one thing, which is that Washington State hates your children and is apparently run by predators, allegedly. So, I got receipts today, people. If you want more information about this, you got questions about anything that you hear today, here's what I want you to do. I want you to send them in to our text line at 509-867-0070. I also want you to hit a like or subscribe. Give me a thumbs up, a rating if you're using those types of apps to listen. And the reason is because that tells me what is most helpful for the audience. So if this is the kind of thing you want to hear more of, that's how you give me your feedback. Hit me with the like and subscribe. Helps the channel out a lot also. And by the way, totally free to you. You want to support a ministry? There you go. No cost. All right. So Proverbs 31, 8 and 9. I read this one out of the Proverbs pretty frequently when we're doing something involving child trafficking or sex trafficking in general or abortion or something like that. It's one that I think Christians in general should just probably have stapled to the front of our mind somewhere. And Proverbs 31, 8 and 9 goes like this. Open your mouth for the mute, for the rights of all who are destitute. Open your mouth, judge righteously, defend the rights of the poor and the needy. Now, you guys know it doesn't take much convincing for me to open my mouth, especially when I've got stuff like this going on. So I'm going to show you guys today what Washington State has in store for your children if you fork them over to the public education system. This will be hopefully the biggest plug for homeschool you've ever heard in your life. Let's start with some Christian thought before we get into the demonism of it all. John Chrysostom, the golden-mouthed orator, said this in a sermon on Romans. He said, "What greater crime is there than to destroy the nature of a child? You are doing the work of a murderer." Thomas Aquinas in the 1200s, "He who harms a child sins more grievously because he injures one who cannot defend himself." And the late, great Dietrich Bonhoeffer says, "The test of the morality of a society is what it does for its children." So Washington State, which, by the way, nobody ever thinks about. You listen to the national discourse and stuff. Nothing ever happens in Washington State that makes the headlines unless there's a riot in Seattle, which happens every couple of years or so. Every once in a while, we'll get a Chaz shout out or something like that from CNN, but that's about it. But Washington State has officially and conclusively failed the morality test by Dietrich Bonhoeffer's wonderful criteria here, if we're judged by what we do to our children. First off, it's one of the most pro-abortion states there is. When Idaho, so after Roe versus Wade was overturned, Idaho said, okay, no more abortions here, or, within these boundaries. Washington State, our governor at the time, Jay Inslee, he said, you know what, all you Idahoans or Idahoians, whatever they're called, says, come and have your abortions over here. And our traffic went through the roof. And so that was just it was an open advertisement for murder. Now, our new guy, Bob Ferguson, he's going even further in that direction. So how we treat our children, we've had a pretty bad track record anyway. But we also, from what I'm hearing from somebody inside the foster care system, we have the foster care, as far as the adoption side specifically, we are rated number 48 out of 50 in the country for our effectiveness at it. So we're pretty awful at that. Now, I should say, we know some folks that work in that system that are in the church, and I'm really glad that they're there. You church members that are listening to this that work for like CPS or whatever, I'm glad that you're there because you can be a light in the dark place. But let's just be honest here, man. There's a lot of goons running around that squad. So anyway, we're going to read some of that today, but we're not good at taking care of our kids. The Washington State public education system is toast, and I do say toast. I'm deciding actually where I want to start today. I got this pile of stuff, and I don't like it. Okay, let's start with this. So We had a family in our church that was trying to adopt. Now, this is the family you want adopting kids in need. This is the family you want doing stuff for the people in the most vulnerable situations because they're awesome and we need more people like them in the world. So if they can have kids in their home and raise them up and reproduce them in ways that they've, like, if they can pass on what they know about being good, decent, functional human beings and contributors to society, this is where you want those kids, right? But they got denied by the state of Washington Department of Children, Youth, and Families for a foster to adopt. And I've got the reading here, or the filing, as to why. It reads, excerpts from it, it reads like this. The letter constitutes notice of the decision by the Department of Children, Youth, and Families, DCYF, Licensing Division, to deny your application for a foster care license. You were licensed from January 27, 2020 through blah, blah, blah. Okay. You were licensed for 2 children, either gender, between the ages of 5 to 15, and you did not submit a renewal and your license has expired, which I call BS, because if you wanted them to have a kid, you would find somebody to wave a pen and put the signature on there. The level of desperation is out there. The level of kids that need homes, you figure out how to navigate your policies to get it done, as you should. So that's a crutch. Okay. On this date, the department received a home study application for your foster care license. You do not meet the minimum licensing requirements. Therefore, your application is denied. During the home study process, concerns were noted regarding your ability to provide a safe and stable home for vulnerable children, and they are as follows. Now, by the way, safe and stable is the definition of this home. So I don't know what their home study criteria was. Actually, yes, I do. I don't know why I said that. They told us what it was. Okay, on this date, the PIF diversity and inclusion section was submitted. And on page 4, it asked, describe how you will support a child's gender identity and expression. You, Mr. Blank, wrote, boys will be wearing boys' clothes. That's pretty clear, right? But it's listed here as a reason for denial. The PIF Diversity and Inclusion section, page 4, also asked, describe how you will support a child's religion and spirituality. You, Mr. Blank, wrote, I do family studies at least 3 times a week from the Bible. I take my children to youth group, and I am a youth leader volunteer. I take my family to church on Sundays and make sure they are in age-appropriate classes. Further, the PIF Diversity and Inclusion section, page 4, asked, describe how you will support the child's religion and spirituality. You, Mrs. Blank, wrote, we are strong believers in God. We will be attending only Christ-centered activities. We will be doing family studies. Man, these just the most solid people you could hope for, man. They say, the family that prays together stays together. Here you go. These guys are doing it. On this date, during a home visit, in efforts to clarify your responses, what was unclear about that? Anyway, in efforts to clarify your responses on your PIF, home study specialist H.H. Kuntz had some follow-up questions regarding how you would fully support and affirm a foster child placed in your care. Specifically, H.S.S. Kuntz asked how you would accept, support, and affirm children with differing sexual identities. When addressing your responses from the diversity and inclusion section of your PIF, you, Mr. Blank, were asked whether you would assist a dependent child in your care who is or identifies as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, and asexual, LGBTQIA+. In finding affirming care resources consistent with what the child wants. You, Mr. Blank, stated that you were definitely not able to do that. Fair enough. I would say that's a calm, clear, and controlled answer. You, Mrs. Blank, explained that you and Mr. Blank had talked about your beliefs regarding SOGI, which is sexual orientation, gender identity expression. Okay, so how the person or kid identifies themselves in terms of sexual identity. Your beliefs regarding SOGI, or SOGI, however they say that, and stated that it might be a deal breaker for both of you. You, Mrs. Blank, stated if a child had a desire to be a different sex, you would not be able to affirm and give them resources supporting their desire. And desire is in quotes here. I think implying that it's not a desire so much as a need, but she used the word desire. You, Mrs. Blank, compared a desire to using drugs, smoking, sex outside of wedlock, and being LGBTQIA+. You, Mrs. Blank, explained that these are sins that need to be repented of. You, Mrs. Blank, believe that the alphabet individuals have sinned, and you would help the child by guiding the child and teaching them God's work, and I think that's word, and biblical principles of right and wrong. And right and wrong are in quotations there. So basically, they were asked, hey, if a kid wants to change their sex and their gender and all of that, then how would you handle it? And they said, well, we would sit with them and tell them what God says is good for them and for their flourishing. So we would guide them. That's exactly what you want parents doing. Anyway, I do find it not odd. I find it oddly clarifying that they put right and wrong in quotes here. The idea of providing affirming care, such as use of pronouns, allowing the child to use clothing that aligns with their preferred gender expression, or seeking medical or mental health services for the child would be against your beliefs. I really doubt that this family is going to say, no, you don't get to seek mental help if you need it. You, Mrs. Blank, felt these actions would be promoting or agreeing with the sin. So you, Mrs. Blank, stated that an individual who identifies as the alphabet is, quote, sinful. She did not say it that way. Stop it. I know her. She didn't say it that way. What that is they pulled a word that she used, sinful, and they pulled it from another context and just slapped it on there. You just called this person sinful. You just disregarded them. You dead named them. That's the same as murder. You, Mr. and Mrs. Blank, emphasized the importance of a child's easy assimilation into the home and Christian beliefs. You stated that children in your care would be required to attend church, attend family Bible studies, and learn Christian values. H.S.S. Kuntz explained separating your personal beliefs and religion and separately caring for the well-being of children placed in your home. You, Mr. Blank, stated, well, there is no separation between our beliefs and our care for our children. Darn right. You tell them, buddy. Way to go. See, just so classy and controlled. I love these guys. Your plan to address the child's challenging behaviors would be by guiding them through Christian principles. Now, this is all bold, but I think that might have just been the copy machine wigging out. But as it's written here, it's in all bolds. Your approach to these challenges would be by guiding them through Christian principles, teaching them values such as kindness, patience, and self-control. Sounds good to me. Your plan is to engage the children in faith-based activities to help reinforce positive behaviors and provide consistent moral guidance. Furthermore, you believe that children should not date until they are in their 20s. Come on now. I love this. The more I read, the more I like these guys. And abstain from sex until they are married. How dare you, bigots? You, Mr. Blank, stating that you were not able to separate your beliefs from the care you provide and that your family lives by Christian values, you further stated that all children in your home would be cared for according to Christian principles. So, on this date, in efforts to mitigate the concerns regarding your ability to care for any child placed in your care and explain the importance of a supportive and affirming home environment for a child who may identify as a part of the alphabet community. I'm not saying that pejoratively. I just really I don't think I need to go through the whole list the whole time. Anyway, the alphabet community, H.S.S. Kuntz sent you, Mr. and Mrs. Blank, some trauma-informed resources for reviewing and recommending some trainings. The materials sent were as follows, and then a long list of assigned reading. Let's see, what's on here? 7 ways to support LGBTQIA plus youth. Go ahead and read that. So this is their homework from the state. We want you to become better parents by our definition. So here, read this stuff. Let's indoctrinate you. You're not allowed to indoctrinate other people, but we'll go ahead and indoctrinate you, right? Do you have convictions? Well, you better keep those separate from the parenting of these kids. But we have convictions, and you better freaking adopt them, or else you get a big denied stamp. Got to be kidding me. All right. On this date, HSS Kuntz conducted a follow-up phone contact with you, Mr. and Mrs. Blank, to ensure receipt of resources and training information. You, Mrs. Blank, acknowledged receipt. Just stacking up evidence. Okay, here we go. Acknowledged receipt of the resources. You, Mr. Blank, stated that Washington state law and DCYF rules requiring affirming care for alphabet identifying children are harmful. Yeah, I'd say so. Look at the suicide attempt rates. You stated that such requirements do not protect children who have experienced trauma and instead further harm them. Come on, buddy. You stated that allowing children to identify as the alphabet group or to express themselves in ways that align with those identities was wrong and damaging. You asserted that these rules are absolutely hurting these children more than they are helping them. HSS Kuntz explained the importance of being able to provide individualized and affirming care to all children, even when the child's identity does not align with your personal values. You stated not being able to separate your beliefs from the care that you provided because of your family values. You specifically expressed discomfort with using preferred pronouns such as queer if requested by the child or youth. You emphasized that you would not provide affirming resources or care and would not use pronouns or terms such as queer, even if asked by the child. Okay, so here's what you got. You got a family that are Christians and desire to live as such, and desire to bring up children in the knowledge and instruction of the Lord, in the fear and the admonition of the Lord, as commanded by the Bible. And then you've got a state saying, no, you don't get to do that. So it all comes down to this. Here's the paragraph that's kind of the summary of the whole thing. It says, you, Mrs. Blank, stated that if a 3 to 6 year old understood any of the SOGI stuff, they were smarter than you. Okay, that might have been a little bit sarcastic, but not incorrect. This stuff is kind of convoluted. And you could not provide them any care or support in these matters. If the child's court-ordered case plan required supportive and affirming services, you would not recommend the child for placement in your household because you do not know what kind of affirming care to give them. You stated that identifying as the alphabet group is a sinful behavior, and sin is anything that is contrary to God's word. You stated that the word of God states that marriage is between a man and a woman to be fruitful and to multiply, and two men cannot produce children naturally. The Bible also states that sodomy is not okay. Despite multiple discussions, emailed resources, and recommended trainings, you will not support or affirm a child that identifies as the alphabet community. Further, your answers demonstrate a lack of understanding of the importance of being supportive and an ally to the alphabet children in your care. Your lack of ability or willingness to provide acceptance and support for every child is deeply concerning. Yeah, clutch your pearls, guys. Jeez, your moral superiority. You know, these things are like convictions that have been deeply held, you know, as of a whopping 8 minutes ago when they became culturally valuable as currency. What's the word I'm looking for? I'm looking for the word virtue signaling. That's what it is. Yeah, I'm not going to read this whole thing. Okay, I'll give you 2 more sentences. Here you go. Because they're deeply concerned. So here's what they write. While the department welcomes foster parents from all walks of life, foster parents are required to meet the child's needs, well-being, following the department's case plan, RCWs, WACs, and court orders. I call BS. If you're meeting the kid's needs, you're not going to put them on a pathway that ends with like a 79% suicide attempt rate after a certain number of years in this lifestyle in this community. You're not going to do that. You're not going to encourage them if they're already on that. If a kid wants to live as a delusion, if they want to make a delusion their preferred truth claim, you're not going to affirm them in that. Because if you live in a lie, you don't get the blessings of living in the truth. You don't get the blessings of living in reality when you live in a fantasy land. You can't do it. You can't live in a dream. And if somebody decides they want to live in a dream and have everybody else around them affirm them, the most unloving thing you could possibly do is affirm them in that, because it's not true. And it will come crumbling down. It will come crashing down. And we just want better for them than that. The conclusion to this section, which is the only section I'm going to read here, your answers to questions on LD documents and during discussion with LD staff demonstrate that your home would not be emotionally safe, nurturing, and supportive environment for every foster child. Accordingly, the department has determined that you are not able to meet the requirements of the foster care regulations, and you do not have the suitability required of foster parents. For these reasons, the department finds it necessary to deny your request for a foster care license. Okay, that was about the first, well, that was excerpts from about the first half of the document. It's a lot of technical jargon and legal stuff after that. But, there you go. So there what you have is a state warding its own values, its own prescribed values over not only a functional, but a healthy nuclear family, which has been the basis for all society for thousands of years. But suddenly we know better and we will enforce better. And if you don't line up with our values and our verbiage and all of these things, then you are the problem. You are unsuited, and we are deeply concerned. And we all know there's nothing worse that you could make somebody in this world than deeply concerned. Maybe triggered. Maybe you could trigger them with a microaggression, and that would be worse than being deeply concerned. But deeply concerned is pretty bad. That'll send these guys to therapy, man. That's combative. It's deeply concerning, isn't it? So that right there is just a little glimpse into an actual document received by a family full of disciples. So is this persecution? No, not on Christians. It's resistance. It's, they had the bigotry that they are accused of directed towards them, but that's not exactly persecution. What that is persecution of children, because now you have a healthy home environment that is a good and a safe place for children to grow and flourish and learn and make mistakes and try and fail and succeed and all of these things that good parents do. And they provide these boundaries for their kids to be able to do things, and they provide safety and real actual affirmation of who they are, made by God, valued no matter what, and right and wrong being prescribed so that the kids can pursue what is good and run away from what is evil. Like all that stuff, the home is the soil that those plants grow in. And here you've got a home, which is a beautiful garden of all of this type of stuff. And the state said, no, we don't like it. Why? Because you're not adopting our perversions that obviously and clearly end in mutilation and death, but we're going to relabel that. We're going to call it affirming. We're going to call it caring. We're going to call it safe. And since you don't meet those definitions, then you do not meet our criteria. So the world and the church have just clashed, okay? And the grounds on which we have clashed is how to care for children. And I just want you to see the world left to its own devices, completely devoid of any divine truth, completely devoid of any biblical anthropology. Like, what is a human? How did God make us? What is good for us? What is bad for us? The world devoid of all of that, this is how they want to take care of your children. Okay? This is how they want to take care of the children of a society. They want to step in and do the parent's job for them, not nearly as well as a parent can. In fact, it's this weird, perverse kind of inverse of that kind of thing. So the kingdom of the world and the kingdom of God have now squared off over who can better take care of children. We win. I don't know what to tell you. We win. Now, next we've got an email that got sent to me. I don't know if it was, I don't know how this person got their hands on it, but this is like an internal training document from the Washington State public school system. Right. And so what it is basically is a list of training materials for teachers and administrators and other professionals in the school system. And it was just a bunch of links, just a whole lot of links to talk about sex education and puberty education and some of that type of stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you guys through some of this stuff, and you're going to see what the teachers in the public school system are having recommended and in some cases prescribed to them so that they can teach this to your children. Now, here's what you're going to notice. You're going to notice that, and I haven't read all of this, I kind of skimmed through it, but I would be willing to bet you're not going to notice any reference to a father or a mother, but you're going to see a whole lot of stuff, and I do know this because I saw it, you're going to see a whole lot of stuff trying to solve problems in society and problems that kids have without reference to fathers and mothers. I think I did see one reference to family, vaguely. Of course, they never define what that is. So yeah, the first one, I printed this one off, and then I'll take you guys through a couple of websites here. This is the guidance document, Sex Trafficking Prevention Instruction. Okay, nobody's in favor of sex trafficking. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's actually a booming industry. A lot of people are in favor of it, but they're evil. So I think most of us can agree, with a few perverts on the fringes, most of us can agree that sex trafficking is bad and we want people to prevent it. So I'm not discouraging people in society's institutions like education being aware of what the markers and the tells are for trafficking going on. I want them to recognize it when they see it. I want them to know what to do once they do recognize it. We want to put a dent in this thing. We want to leave traffickers no safe place to hide, and we want to leave trafficking victims with a million different options at their fingertips for what they can do. That would be the goal. So the intention behind this, I can get on board with that. Guidance document, sex trafficking prevention instruction. Here's some excerpts. Understanding the legislative requirements. RCW 28A, blah, 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 requires that all school districts in Washington offer instruction on sex trafficking awareness and prevention, ensuring that each student receives this instruction at least once between grade 7 and graduation. This instruction may be integrated into existing courses or units or be part of a repurposed course or lesson. OSPI is tasked with reviewing and making available open education instructional resources that support comprehensive education on sex trafficking. Okay, so basically, we want our teachers and so on to know how to recognize and engage trafficking issues. Fair enough. But here's how they say you must go about it. Age-appropriate content. Tailor the content to be developmentally appropriate. For middle school students, focus on awareness, recognizing warning signs, online safety. So far, I'm okay with the content of that. I'm not cool with the school system sucking it up and making it their responsibility. This ought to be happening in the home. But, that's so far so good. Online safety and understanding the basic concepts of consent, red flags, alarms, consent, healthy relationships, and exploitation. High school students can engage with more in-depth discussion on these topics, on the topics above, as well as socioeconomic factors contributing to trafficking, legal ramifications, and community resources for support. You know who the last people in the world are that I want teaching my kids about consent, about sexual consent, healthy relationships, and nonviolent interactions? The last people in the world I want doing that are like math teachers. Teach them math. We hire you to teach them math. Science teachers, PE, we hire you to teach them that subject, all right? Talking about what consent looks like. I can do this with my kids in 3 seconds. Hey kids, you want to know what consent looks like? A ring. That's it. I got a really good, clear consent here. You don't need to go back and forth with all this college campus stuff. Do you fully consent? Am I going to get sued later? No, you put a ring on it. You got yourself some consent. Clear as day. Oh, let's see here. Yeah, I'm not reading that one. Should have turned my phone on silent. Sorry about that. Empowerment and advocacy. Educate students on recognizing signs of trafficking and how to safely intervene, seek help. Okay, that's good stuff. Or advocate for themselves and others. Programs and focus on boosting self-esteem. What? Teaching decision-making skills and empowering youth to assert their boundaries can reduce their vulnerability to traffickers. Excuse me. Sorry for the cut there. So boosting self-esteem and everything, you know who's really good at that? Fathers, right? This kind of thing, like you can have really good teachers. I was a product of the public school system in a lot of ways, and I had some really, really good teachers. Mr. Wallace, my 6th grade history teacher, awesome, right? Even Mr. Berg, my kindergarten teacher, apparently, I got a lot out of that from, I think my mom remembers it better than I do, but I just remember I liked the guy. I had really great coaches, and things like that. So the job can be done well. And again, we've got some public school teachers in our church, and they're phenomenal. And I'm really glad they're out there because they are the missionaries. That being said, it's not a teacher's job to give a kid self-esteem. Can you take opportunities as they come along? Sure. Can you, do you have the ability to damage their self-esteem in ways you need to be careful of? Okay, fair enough. But taking training on boosting a kid's self-esteem, look, forget about that, man. A father, and mothers also, but fathers have to take lead in this because just naturally and biologically we will. The father is going to be the most important factor in a kid's self-image. So self-esteem, I'm not really sold on that term, like feeling good about yourself or whatever, but fine, let's go with it. Just self-worth, understanding who you are and why you matter, being able to articulate it and enforce those boundaries when people cross them, which they will, and then teaching them how to handle it when people do cross those boundaries of your worth. That is dad. Man. Now, mom helps. Mom's got a huge role in this because she probably gets more FaceTime with the kids than dad does. But dad is huge in this. What you're seeing here is the public school system sucking up the job of the family into its own job description and saying, now we have to be the ones to do this. So none of this stuff is inherently bad so far. It's just not their job. And so when something that's good but not your job is done by you and claimed by you, it becomes bad and it actually becomes harmful. Vetting curricula and speakers. Okay, so evaluate accuracy and sensitivity. Ensure that any chosen programs or speakers provide medically and legally accurate information, that it is trauma-informed and free. Yeah, that word's got baggage. And free from stigmatizing language and offers actionable guidance for students. Community and family engagement. Okay, we've got to mention to the family. All right. Do we have a mention of fathers or mothers? Community and family engagement. Engage with local experts, families, and students to ensure the content is relevant and appropriate. Okay, you know what? That's a base hit. I'll give them that one. If you're going to be teaching stuff at the school, then to make it a mandate to run it past the parents, okay, I'm fine with that. Provide parents/guardians with resources to support and encourage ongoing conversations at home. Not the job of the school, but whatever. I see where they're going with it. When in doubt, utilize instructional materials reviewed by OSPI to ensure content is accurate, up to date, and aligns with state standards and legislative requirements. Counteroffer, screw you. No. Here's what happens. In a family, the father and the mother transfer their values across generations. Okay? Now, every generation receives its values primarily from father and mother, and then they will take that into the marketplace of ideas. They will make changes. They will knock the rough edges off of it. Every generation will have its own emphases, its own cultural philosophies, its own set of problems it has to solve, and so they will shape those views in their generation. But the place from which to receive the place from which to receive those values is primarily mom and dad. And then you put in grandma and grandpa, and you put in your faith community and all of that. And by the way, I'm in favor of this structure, even for people who aren't Christians. Okay, I think that any religion, any family that practices a religion has an obligation by integrity to pass down that religion to their children. This is the job of parents, is to transfer the worldview, right? Now, in the case of other religions, I hope it doesn't transfer effectively, right? Because I would like them all to become Christians rather than whatever their other religion is. But the family structure is such that it is the unit for passing down the worldview. And so again, to suck that up into the realm of public education is a violation of the very structure itself. And what you're seeing here is not necessarily somebody that's just evil. Like that foster care thing that I read, that's just evil. That's just straight up, unadulterated, unmitigated evil. This is actually well-intentioned. This is a well-intentioned train wreck. Is what this is, morally, ethically, and then I think in terms of the results of it. Because what's happening here is you're getting people who I think really actually want to help, but they're just not in a position where they have the ability to help. But since you got a big budget, you can make that your job. You can pretend you're in that position, or you can redefine where that position is and then place yourself at the center of it. But it's not going to work, man. It's not going to work, right? A teacher or a school administrator can be a really good influence on a child. Cannot replace mom and dad. Just can't do the job. Can't. So, none of this actually is by accident. What we have here is a couple of quotes from the core foundational documents of communism. And what you're seeing play out here is exactly the playbook that the communists laid out, right? Now, I'm not that kind of guy that says there's a communist behind every bush, but I will say this, these ideas have taken root in such a way that even people who aren't communists are starting to we've been soaking in these ideas long enough now, and they've had a kind of cultural currency and a kind of cachet long enough that it has started to make sense to people in our society. So even people who do not consider themselves to be communists are operating on communist paradigms when it comes to things like the state's responsibility over kids with the public school system or anything else. This is all part of the plan. So I read you this from 1848, okay? They said this is where we're going. This is Karl Marx in the Communist Manifesto, Chapter 2. The abolition of the family. Even the most radical flare up at this infamous proposal of the communists. So he tells you right out where we're going. We're going to abolish the family. I thought it was really weird during COVID when obviously they locked down everybody in the houses, and then they were shocked when like abuse rates spiked and rape, and even in family and stuff spiked because there was nowhere for people to go to get away from dangerous folks. So they locked everybody in their houses with their abusers, and then they were like, oh no, people are getting abused. And we're like, yeah, no kidding, dingbat. Like, you made sure of it. And then there were all these calls for the abolition of the family. They were like, this is it. We have to abolish the family. You see here, it is a naturally toxic institution. And I'm like, that's really weird coming from people calling for more government who are the ones causing these problems. But this is, I didn't understand it at first. I'm like, abolition of the family. I thought it was just some kooks out there that had spent a whole long time smoking a lot of dope while they were locked inside. But no, it's logically and philosophically consistent given their first principles. And their first principles are listed out here in the Communist Manifesto. Right? So that's one. We're going to abolish the family. Why? He says this. On what foundation is the present family, the bourgeois family, based? On capital. On private gain. So he said the family is primarily an economic unit. And you can see why he said this, right? When the family basically is understood at its core to run the farm, sustain itself, grow its own food, sell things, run a business, do stuff. The kids participate in the economics of the home. The wife participates in the economics of the home. This is pre-industrial revolution. The father had not been taken out of the home yet, and the family very much was an economic unit. What Marx did was he took that function of the family and he made that the core of the family. He said, since the family is an economic unit, it is primarily an economic unit. And since we're going to change all the way that economies work, we're going to change all economics, then the family will no longer be necessary. We will abolish it. Now, Karl Marx, being one of the worst family men in all of history and, a very articulate and semi-genius moron, he was a walking contradiction. Or stumbling contradiction. He was drunk a lot. But he didn't understand what a family actually was because he'd never lived in a healthy one. And he didn't have a healthy one himself, and he had no interest in having a healthy family himself. So he saw it as an economic unit because he was obsessed with money, which is really ironic, actually, for a guy who was also obsessed with abolishing money. But anyway, so he said the family is an economic unit. We change the economy, therefore the family is no longer necessary. He missed that the family is a natural institution that's written into our DNA code, that God actually made it, and it's not negotiable. It's gonna happen. And if you jack with the structure of the family, then you're the entire society that's based on that jiggery is going to fall apart. But the family will stay. The family will remain, right? It may take a hit for a couple of generations, but it's coming back because it's kind of an invincible unit, right? He didn't know this because he didn't know anything about the family. He didn't know anything about love or interpersonal relationships or just humans or anything, right? Here's a good book for you. If you want to read more about this, you read Paul Kangor, The Devil and Karl Marx, and you'll see his philosophical underpinnings for this stuff. It was just Satanism by his own admission. And then Intellectuals by Paul Johnson. He's got a chapter in there on Karl Marx, explains pretty much everything you need to know. So abolish the family. We don't need it as an economic unit. He says this: the bourgeois family will vanish as a matter of course when its complement vanishes, meaning capital, money, the economics as it is. And both will vanish with the vanishing of capital. Okay, it will vanish with the vanishing of capital. Then, what are we going to do as a replacement for the family? He says, do you charge us with wanting to stop the exploitation of children by their parents? To this crime we plead guilty. So he says, here's a foundational piece. Parents exploit children. That is their core function. They exploit the children for labor, for economic purposes. The bourgeois claptrap about the family and education becomes all the more disgusting the more by the action of modern industry, all family ties among the proletarians are torn asunder. In other words, tear it all apart, get rid of it. Now, his buddy, Friedrich Engels, who's kind of known as the nice one because he was the guy that knew how to balance a checkbook and things like that. And every time Marx drank all of his money away, Engels would bail him out. And Engels was one of the only people actually at Marx's funeral, if I remember correctly. And he actually, I guess as a pastor, I would say he preached the funeral. And so he was a little more mild-mannered and stuff. And so he's seen as the nice guy. He's not a nice guy. Look at what he said in his book, The Origin of the Family. With the transfer of the means of production into common ownership, communism, the individual family ceases to be an economic unit of society. The care and education of the children becomes a public affair. Society looks after all children alike. You see that? So the kids don't have parents anymore. Now society raises the children. And how are you going to get that done? Well, you've got to have these structures in place to do the child rearing. Enter the Washington State public education system. We will raise your kids. We will teach your kids about self-esteem. We will teach them about healthy relationships and sexual consent and engagement and all this. It is logically consistent with the foundations of the communist worldview. Okay? So that's what's happening right now. That's what you're seeing play out. The state will decide if you get to parent a child. The state will decide if you deserve to be able to help this child and if this child needs your help or not. Because we've got the money, we've got the guns, and so we will decide what your family structure will look like. Now, let me say again, I cannot say this enough. There are really good, caring, loving people in these structures that just want to help. Right? Like I know some people who work in the foster care system and they just want to help kids that don't have a place to live. And they're some of the most compassionate people I've ever met in my life. I'm saying that the structure itself is so jacked up that and intentionally so, that these good people actually don't get their way. right? I would prefer that they get their way about things. And frankly, in the most prosperous society there has ever been, I'm glad that we've got a little bit of a safety net for people in the hardest situations. The problem is you take those fringes, those hard situations, and you say, well, this is the natural result of the center. And so then you take those fringes, move them to the center, and say, now the whole thing is a problem. It's not. The structural family, the nuclear family structure, it holds, and it's good, and it produces healthy people, and it produces multi-generational lineage, and even in economic terms, it produces multi-generational wealth. So I can solve all of these problems that these communists are trying to solve with one word: marriage. Okay? Or maybe another word: abstinence. I kid you guys not. If you don't have sex until you are married, 90% of these problems go away. Will there still be bad fathers? Yes. There's still going to be alcoholics that beat their kids. Okay? They will be out on the fringes. But there's this advantage also: there will be a society of men that can go and handle those guys when they get out of line. So not everything has to fall to the state. It can be handled on a granular level. It can be handled on an individual level. Are there still going to be bad moms that find their emotional security vicariously through the accomplishments of their children and wind up being emotionally abusive? Sure. People are people, and people are going to be people in all over the place, right? Those bad things will happen, but there's no scenario in this world where those problems go away. Right? So what you can do is you can either make sure that the structure holds through these institutions like the nuclear family, and make sure that those problems end up on the fringes with the community resources to be able to engage them through God's design, or you can make those problems the norm and then look at it and say, wow, look at all of these problems. We better do more. And then the solution becomes more of what caused the problem in the first place. Welcome to communism and the family. All right. So in that email then, with resources to teachers, was a whole lot of big list of links. Let me show you some of these guys. So this one right here, let's take a look. So these are things that your public school teachers in Washington State, your teachers and administrators, are being told to look at. Some trainings they're being told to go to. Some of it is recommended. Some of it seems to be prescribed. So this is the Many Ways of Being curriculum. An inclusive, youth-centered curriculum focused on gender equity, healthy relationships, and safer sex practices. All right. Here, science teacher. Here, math teacher. English lit teacher. Teach these youth healthier sexual practices. I got a healthier sexual practice for you. Abstinence until marriage. I'm telling you, man, this whole thing is just them trying to solve problems that shouldn't have been created anyway, because if it was socially normal to wait until you are married to have sex, 95% of this goes away. Maybe 99% of it goes away. All right, what is this stuff? It's a curriculum. Many Ways of Being is a sex education program for all young people ages 15 to 19, aiming to promote healthy, consensual, there's that word consent again. Hey, how do you get consent between you and the other person when both of your heart rates are through the roof, your hormones are flooding your brains like crazy, and your logic has completely disappeared? Which, by the way, in sexual experiences, your logic is supposed to disappear. You're supposed to be married with somebody you can trust absolutely, where nobody has to play defense and you don't have to think critically about whether you're going to be okay or not. You're supposed to be able to abandon yourself to the passions of the moment, fulfill your every whim, and not have to think critically. And so here they're saying, we're going to teach you how to be in dangerous situations and how to think critically in the middle of it at age 16. This is going to go great. Yeah, total winner here, geniuses. Aiming to promote healthy, consensual, and violence-free relationships among young people while reducing the incidence of STIs and unplanned pregnancies. This program is a curriculum comprised of blah, blah, blah. At the core of the curriculum's theory of change are... Whoa, what was that? At the core of the curriculum's theory of change are norms and their effects on adolescents' beliefs and behaviors related to sexual and reproductive health. Many Ways of Being uses a gender transformative approach. What does that mean? A gender transformative approach, and aims to promote shifts from restrictive attitudes to more equitable ones and strengthen skills to support young people engaging in healthy behaviors. Okay, so as near as I can figure, they want to change everything about the way that our world sees sex, and so they're going after the youth. All right, so if you got a kid age 15 to 19, they're coming after them, and they want to change everything that you have ever taught them. Yeah, Many Ways of Being. So right off the bat, with the title, right, they're going to say, whatever you feel like doing, that's good. You just do you. You be you. There are many ways to do this. I'd like to have a sex ed curriculum called Narrow is the Way and Few Will Find It. Maybe we should do that. All right. What else we got here? It's bananas. Why the sexual exposure chart belongs in the bin. Okay, you guys have seen the sexual exposure chart, right? If one person sleeps with two people, and those two people have slept with two people, and those two people have slept with two people, it's the Amway chart of it's like horny Amway. That's what it is. So everybody down here that like all these 5,000 people or whatever that have had sexual exposure, you are now exposed to every STI and STD that they have been exposed to. So your risk is just going up, and the more people you sleep with, the more it multiplies exponentially, right? So that's the sexual exposure chart. It's simple math. This guy doesn't like math. Ooh, maybe it's because math is racist. All right, it would go a little like this. A college freshman walks into the university clinic with a sore throat, and before they can even sit down, a poster on the bulletin board spells out their doom. One hookup after a party last week, the chart suggests, has, quote, exposed them, not just to that person, but to everyone that person has ever hooked up with. Why can't we just use the word fornicate? And everyone those people have ever been with, and so on. By the end, our hapless freshman is linked to thousands and thousands of strangers, all strung together like some far-reaching epidemiological conspiracy. Or basic math. The nurse leans in. How many partners have you had? Okay, yeah, this is all very dramatic. Bold section over here. The sexual exposure chart pinned on boards in clinics and university health centers across the country and perhaps beyond has long haunted how we think about intimacy and connection. You want intimacy and connection? Put a ring on it. The sexual exposure chart pinned on... Oh, yeah, no, that's what that says. Considering it at face value, the chart's math just doesn't math. Aren't we clever? This is why you shouldn't let millennials, and I say this as a millennial, you shouldn't let them write blog posts, okay? Who was that? Was that Ketanji Brown Jackson? Is that the Supreme Court justice who was like putting memes in her Supreme Court rulings and stuff? Oh, our generation is screwed. The truth is, real world networks are rarely perfectly exponential. Well, yeah. There's variables, dude. Whatever. Sexual networks overlap. That's the problem. Especially in some communities. Worse yet, the chart doesn't report actual disease transmission probability. It completely erases protective factors like regular testing, condoms, PrEP, and DoxyPep. I don't know what DoxyPep is. But and if you're married, you don't have to. You see how much of the dictionary I just don't have to study? It's very liberating. By portraying risks as an endlessly expanding web, it exaggerates dangers and obscures reality. Okay, here's my question for you. Would you say the same thing about heroin needles? So if a drug user is using a needle that somebody gave to him and nobody ever threw away their needles, because you can't exactly throw away your body after a sexual experience. If nobody ever threw away their needles and people were getting needles off of the street, would you be okay with a needle exposure chart instead of a sexual exposure chart? Because it's the same math as body fluids being transferred between people. Beyond its tawdry relationship to facts. That's an oddly conservative word to use for an article like this. Beyond its tawdry relationship to facts, the sexual risk exposure chart is a good reminder that data visualizations are never neutral. Yeah, no kidding. This is not a neutral issue. Like, I am very pro health for people, which means I'm very anti exposure to everybody else's stuff. Of course, many young people will eventually unlearn this unasked for baggage, forgetting the chart in favor of healthier, more affirming visions of sexuality. In other words, they're going to get promiscuous and forget the chart. No kidding. Forgetting the chart in favor, but this will take time, years, even decades. No, I don't think so. I think pretty much people forget about it. That's why I think it's high time for us as a field to tear these charts from our bulletin boards and confront their harmful, misleading, and self-defeating messages and so on. All you've said, dude, is that there's more information that fits on a chart and we're not accounting for all of those factors. Yeah, I know. It gets worse the more you look. Okay, so here's his suggestion for where to go from here. Acknowledging the damage done by past scare tactics, rejecting body count discourse as regressive junk science, and affirming that sex can be safe, pleasurable, and human. I know, it's called monogamy. That's why, to promote 2 clinics in Baltimore, we created a series of visual charts a series of visuals to call out just how bananas the sexual exposure chart truly is. What a pun. This guy's clever. And set the record straight. It's not about how many people you hook up with. It's about how you hook up that matters. So here's his new chart. So you got double exposure here. What's that supposed to be? Some kind of orgy or something? You got risk right there because, get it, because there's nothing covering it. Wow, he's so clever. You've got infection right there because the peel broken condom. Yeah. Frequent testing is one protective measure. You got PrEP, you got meds, you got vaccinations, and you got condoms. In real life, how you hook up matters more than how many people you hook up with. Yeah, not really. I can guarantee that I'm not going to get any sexually transmitted diseases if I'm not having sex with anybody that doesn't have a sexually transmitted disease. And monogamy just wipes out that problem, doesn't it? Body count is propaganda. No, sir. That's what we call projection. You are propaganda. That one's gone. All right, what do we got here? Period basics, 15 minutes. Okay, now this kind of thing, yeah, what is a period? Managing periods. Listen, women in the family are so good at this. And look, I know this information needs to get transmitted from one generation of women to the next, and I'm sure there's a lot of questions to ask and all that kind of stuff. But man, if we could just have nuclear families with multi-generational wisdom, then young ladies have people to ask when they have problems or questions or concerns, or have a church. We got a brother here who his wife was on a mission trip, and his daughter was, just kind of at that phase of life where all this stuff was new to her, and she had some kind of issue or needs or needed something from the grocery store or whatever, and she was embarrassed to talk about it with dad. Totally get it. So he called up a sister from the church and said, hey, listen, can you pick up my daughter and take her to the grocery store? And that's all I'm going to tell you. And the sister from church said, I'll be there in 10 minutes. And so she showed up, and they go to the store. Dad didn't ask any questions, and women just handled the community needs, right? So I get the need for this kind of stuff, but putting it in the hands of educators and saying, let's structure it like this and make it part of our education system. Man, this stuff is so much better in home, in community, in church. Just teach them math, teach them reading, teach them French, teach them stuff that mom can't teach them. Because you know what mom can teach a daughter? You know what grandma can teach a daughter? That. You know what sisters at the church can teach a daughter? Periods in 15 minutes, all right? I don't need that from professionals, man. All right. Yeah, fathers, I'm sensing a theme here. All this is going to come back to something. Fathers in the home, nuclear families, patriarchy, okay? And I don't mean that, the world has reclaimed that term. Patriarchy means an abusive man that runs everything with an iron fist. In the Bible, patriarchy means one man is responsible for the care of everybody underneath him, and he sacrifices as necessary, joyfully so, might I add, in order to achieve the flourishing of everybody underneath him, and the buck stops with him. And he answers to God directly for the state of the home. That's patriarchy. It's biblical, and it's good. And it's missing here. So my prediction so far, true to form, not a single reference of fathers or mothers. Some vague reference to parents/guardians, but we all know they could mean anything by that. More than milestones. Okay, so this is going out to your public educators. Supporting the sexual health of diverse adolescents. No, monogamy, okay? Monogamy, father in the home, patriarchy. All these problems go away. And then when there are kids that are confused about their sexuality, which almost every kid will be at some point, right? What woman was not, maybe there are some, I don't know, but I just know it's common that a woman at a young age will have a very intense sisterly love for one of her friends, and she'll be confused for a minute and think that she's a lesbian. And she just needs a parent to say, no, that's called friendship. Right? The world doesn't have a category for this because the world slams everything into a sexual passion. And so if you've got any passions at all, then, as much as Freud has been discredited, we still revert to him and we say, if you've got a passion, that's because you've got a repressed sexual urge. So you must be a lesbian, or you must actually be a boy, or something like that. It's like, no, that's called friendship. Go love your friends. It's a good thing. It's so freeing for people. But instead, in the absence of a nuclear family where that kind of conversation can take place, where you can have these conversations where it's like, Dad, I got a problem, and there's nothing that can be said to break that relationship. There can be tension in relationships, but there's nothing that can be said to make your dad love you any less. I'm talking about a biblical patriarchy, okay? A biblical maternal relationship where there's nothing that can be said to make the mother love you any less. When you've got that kind of relationship, like disciples of Christ raising up kids in the fear and the admonition of the Lord, you don't have to go searching for another identity, right? You don't have to be, a diverse adolescent. You can be a normal human because it's good. It's a good thing. I don't even want to read this. This is going to make me cry. Yeah, what do we got here? Oh, this one, okay, another base hit. So there we go. They struck out 19 times, but somebody got the second base here. Probably the wrong analogy to use in an episode like this. So this is for homeless teens that are vulnerable to trafficking situations. I'm actually okay with this one. I'm in favor of teachers and public school officials knowing what they're looking at here. And if there's a kid that's sleeping in a car or, without parents or sleeping on a bench or something, they're definitely vulnerable to trafficking. And they do need the teachers do need to know what the resources are available out there. So, okay, I'll give them that one. There you go. What else are your teachers being prescribed? Online messages about masculinity hurt boys' self-esteem, don't you know? How educators can help. Young boys increasingly report seeing content online that promotes a particular view of masculinity and gender roles, like that boys must build muscle and have lots of money to impress girls, or that girls should focus on homemaking rather than on jobs and careers. This is harmful? Somebody should have told Jesus. I think he missed the memo on that. Jesus might have turned out better if he went to the Washington State public school systems. And exposure to that content on social media is associated with feelings of isolation, anxiety, and low self-esteem. Yeah, in this context, you know what low self-esteem means? It means you want to tell a kid it's okay not to accomplish anything, and they're the victim because they've been lazy and they haven't accomplished anything. If you feel bad about yourself, now I'm talking about boys here, okay? For boys, if you feel bad about yourself, like you don't measure up, you know what you should do? You should go find a dragon and kill it. You should go find a mountain and climb it. You should go find a challenge and master it, or try and fail. Like, so what, man? The reason that boys have low self-esteem is because they see these images of masculinity and they can't quite get there yet because they're too small, they're too young, they don't have the muscles for it yet, and it gives them something to strive for. And so the low self-esteem itself is not a good thing, but it's a necessary phase in motivating a boy to become a man who can handle some problems, right? So when my fifth kid, he's smaller than the other boys right now. He hasn't hit his growth spurts yet. And it's really frustrating for him, right? Because he can't, like when the boys are wrestling, like he can't hang with them at the same level and that kind of thing. And he's not the baby, so he doesn't get all the attention that the baby gets from other people. Like he's not the little cute one, because the littler one, they're always like, oh, he's the baby, he's the cute one. And so he's kind of in this middle age, right? This middle phase. And that, I wouldn't say he's got low self-esteem, but it's the same type of thing where he's just not confident in himself in some areas. And so what's the response to that? Do I need to tell him, no, actually, you're perfect. It's the world that's wrong. You're being repressed. No, man, we teach the kid to wrestle. We teach him some moves. I ended up teaching him some moves that I didn't teach his brothers so that he had a bit of an advantage, because even though they got a little more muscle, I want him to know these moves that can take them by surprise so that he can hold his own in a brotherly wrestling match, right? So you teach him how to shoot a bow. You teach him how to hunt a jackrabbit, things like that. Like low self-esteem it's like hunger. It's not good, it's not comfortable, but it drives you towards a product. And so it's the father's job to make sure, and mothers to a lesser degree, but definitely the dad, to, I should say it this way. It's both parents' job, led by the father, to ensure that these moments of low self-esteem are met with the encouragement to go and accomplish something. Okay? No, prescribing masculinity is not the problem. Those are the key takeaways from a new report by Common Sense Media, sounds like anything but, that explores boys' experiences online. Hey, maybe keep your boys offline. Send them outside. Go dig a hole and find a snake. Tie it in a knot and kick it. What do we got here? Sexual and reproductive health among youth who experience the justice system. To be honest, I don't really know what that means. Does that mean youth that have been incarcerated or what? Regardless, sexual and reproductive health among youth who experience the justice system. There is no sexual and reproductive health for youth. Now, obviously, you don't want to take that too far. Yes, there's hygiene issues. We were talking about the periods and 15 minutes thing a minute ago. That is considered reproductive health. But if you're talking about sexual engagement and birth control and these types of things, there's no healthy way to do that for youth. There is only a healthy way to do that inside of a heterosexual lifelong marriage. This whole thing is bunk, and this is what your public school system is prescribing to its leaders here. Anti-bullying policies in school and alphabet young people. Maybe we could just call this gay plus. Lesbian, that's a gay woman. Gay, that's gay. Bisexual, you're kind of gay and straight at the same time. Transgender, it ain't heteronormative, I'll give you that. And then queer, I'm not that old. Like, that used to be another word for gay. Yeah, okay, gay plus, that's what we're going with. You heard it here first. School policies that specifically prohibit all forms of anti-gay plus bullying were associated with lower rates of in-person bullying at school. Yeah, okay. So don't bully people. You know what's a really good... Oh, okay. Majority, 93% of gay plus young people ages 13 to 18 reported being currently enrolled in school at the time of the survey administration. Among those students, 38 reported having been bullied in person at school in the past year. You know, actually, I would have expected that to be higher, to be honest, because this is self-reported, right? And in these communities, your struggle is your membership card into that community. So the more you've been oppressed, the more valuable you are in that community, the more intersectionality points you have. So I'm surprised, actually, that not more than 38% of people said that they had been bullied. I would have figured that that's the kind of admission that's encouraged, but yeah, whatever. You know what's a really good antidote to bullying is fathers, for a couple of reasons. Number one, fathers, and again, it's both parents, but led by the father. If the father is in the home and married to mom, then they promote an environment where the kid knows who they are and why they matter. And so they're not as susceptible to bullying, because there's, like, let's take verbal bullying, for example. If you are being verbally bullied by somebody, but it just doesn't hurt because you know better, like, oh, you suck, you're dumb, you're gay, all the stuff that you say when you're in like middle school or elementary school or whatever. If the kid knows who they are and why they matter, they can slough that off. They can be like, oh, yeah, okay, like, ow, you're an idiot, I'm going to go eat a sandwich, and that comes from having a father in the home that teaches a kid who they are and why they matter and how God sees them. And then, also dads that teach boys how to fight. Now I'm not a big fan of boys getting in fights at school, but I understand that a boy has to get in a fight once in a while as a kid. Like, it's just, it kind of has to happen. Like, it's just sort of like a part of development. It's like getting in a wreck on his bike. I don't want my boys to get in bike accidents, but you know what? When they do, there are some benefits to it that you can't really replace developmentally. So, it just sort of is what it is. But when a dad can teach a boy how to fight, there's an increased likelihood that he won't have to, right? So, yeah. Studies, all these, did my screen just go off? All of these things, teaching people how to avoid bullying could be solved by a dad who is there. Okay, LGBTQ student rights. Students have the right to be who they are and express themselves in public schools. Why does sexual identity have to be expressed? Answer, it doesn't. And why don't we talk about this enough? What urges you have and who you want to copulate with should not be a matter of public expression. There is such a thing as private business, and that stuff ought to be staying private. That's why when we put clothes on, we tell our kids you're covering your privates, because what you do with it ain't nobody's business. Do I have a First Amendment right in school? Student rights, the rights of pregnant students. Okay, so it's teaching people. Oh, look at that. It's the ACLU. I didn't even look at that. This is ACLU. So it's teaching people how to be activists for their own victim group. Got it. Youth-centered environment shift program. Guys, no, I'm exhausted with this stuff. Youth-friendly care network. I don't care. This is sex ed to go for teach to go. What in the world? We've made fast food out of sex education. Oh, look at this. Oh, this is good stuff right here. You want to know if they're taking care of your kids? Quick start guide. 3 ways to use sex ed to go. Here, teachers, let me train you on how to do this. All of these videos produced by Planned Parenthood, who makes a lot of money murdering babies. And now they're going to, since you didn't kill these babies, and they'll just go ahead and take over on how you teach them to kill their own. Wow, what a business model. Pyramid scheme indeed. Yep, so Planned Parenthood resources going out to public school administrators, building support through family engagement. Hey, look, family. This is great. There's a mention of family. Let's see what it says. Family engagement in education is vital to the children's welfare. Well, yeah. Hold on, there's another one from the same thing here. Ah, that's an expanded link. Okay. Family engagement in puberty education. Family engagement. How about family primacy? Okay. The importance of family engagement. Every school includes family engagement. Every school includes family engagement in their priorities because they know how important it is. Important is different than vital. I think they're missing it. Family engagement in education is vital. Okay, there it is. I stand corrected. To children's welfare and their academic success. Maintaining strong home and school partnerships is also the foundation for a high-functioning school that is supported by the community and avoids needless controversy. Wouldn't want those lawsuits now. When it comes to teaching puberty education, family engagement is even more important. After all, parents are the primary sex educators of their children. Okay, thank you. They said it. I would still prefer that we see fathers and mothers here because I don't know what they mean by parents and I don't trust their definitions, but I'll give them that one. So parents are the primary sex educators of children. Parents begin teaching their children through modeling behavior and verbal and nonverbal communication from birth. Yet most parents did not get a positive sex education when they were young. How do you know? Shut up. Therefore, many parents rely on schools to provide the education they lack. And therein lies the problem. Yeah, parents really are the ones that ought to be doing this, but they're not, so we better do it. Each part of the home and school partnership has its role to play. You see them inserting themselves in the family structure here? Parents and other family members are the only ones who can teach their children family and spiritual religious values. Educators are well equipped to teach students the factual information and skills needed to be safe and healthy now and into the future. When parents and educators work together, they are more effective than either one of them alone. Wildly incorrect, totally untrue, and a pernicious lie. What this is this system here saying, we're going to give a nod, we're going to give a little bit of a compliment, a little bit of a back rub to the idea of parents so that they say, oh, I feel validated. And then we're going to sneak on in there and say, but really, we're the experts in this. So why don't you just let us teach your kids how to have healthy sexual relationships? How about this? Buzz off. Get out of the bedroom, get out of the living room, you stay in the classroom, and you teach the kids academics. A society employs schools in order to teach the kids academics. And I'm fine with expanding that to electives such as music and art and, some sports and things like that. That's all good, healthy stuff. But when it comes to perpetuating a family, the information on how to do that is to perpetuate a family. If you want to teach a kid how to start a school, then you can start a program at school. But if we want to teach a kid how to start a family, you know who's the best at that is two parents who have actually done it and known this kid since they were born and know what they're inheriting and what they're going to struggle with and what they're good at and what they're not good at and what their successes are likely to be and what the dangers are around the corner and would give their very own lives for this child. That's who you want teaching the kids how to reproduce a healthy family into the future. And that includes marriage, that includes sexuality, it includes parenting, discipline, shopping, nutrition, all of those economic sciences that my wife is so very, very good at about like how do you make sure that a family's nutrition is balanced out. That's not a home ec course that you take for one semester. That's something that you learn by watching mom for 18 years before you launch out and do it on your own. So the point of all of this, people, is get the school system out of your home. Let them be good at what they're good at. If in Washington, they're good at anything these days. I know some teachers who are very good at some things, but the structure itself seems to be setting those things aside in favor of doing things that they're awful at and are always going to be awful at, even if they have the best of intentions. So let the home be the home, let the school be the school, sphere sovereignty, and everybody can actually help the kids as God intended. And furthermore, when you hear things like when Hillary Clinton said back in the day, it takes a village to raise a child, it's a cute little saying. I think she actually got that from an African tribe that has said that in a tribal setting for like hundreds of years or something. But she said it in our culture. And this is what she was talking about. So it does not take a village to raise a child. It takes a nuclear family to raise a child, ideally with multi-generational support from grandma, grandpa, aunts, uncles, cousins, extended family, things like that. And ideally in a faith community, in a church, because I would prefer that everybody be a Christian, but in a community where people are going through the same things and you can share resources and ideas and rides to places, sports teams and things like that. And then there can be other engagements from the other spheres outside of that. You can have social programs that kids can, take part in if their parents decide it's healthy for them. You can have schools that kids can go to if their parents decide that for some reason they need to do that instead of homeschooling or something like that. So all of these things have their place. But when you start blurring those lines and you start crunching in on somebody else's territory there, the results speak for themselves. It's death, destruction, carnage. It is kids that need training from the people who don't know how to protect them on how to protect themselves. It's kids that are left to fend for themselves, figure out their own gender, figure out their own sex, figure out their own sexuality, figure out their own identity, their own purpose in life, their own reason for even living. Like, why am I alive today? Why did I wake up today and cling to life instead of death? There ought to be a reason for that, and they're not going to get that from a program written by Planned Parenthood. So today I'm a little bit fired up and I'm done ranting, and I'm going to give you guys a break, and I'll see you on the next one.
Hungry for Wisdom is a ministry of Grace and Truth Community in West Richland, Washington. 1 John 4:19. We love him because he first loved us. If you are enjoying Hungry for Wisdom, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share it. Leave us a 5-star rating if you think we've earned it.